Hey guys, welcome to an episode in the Loony Adventure. Let's call this one Stream Gap Episode 1. I hope to be back with the stream soon, as the internet situation seems to be very close to be resolved. But until then, we're continuing this adventure in episode form. In today's episode, I finish up the new museum hall, and let me tell you, it is quite the epic project. I'm super excited with how it turned out. For the ceiling of the museum, I made this design in Photoshop. The easy way to put this on there would be using software and a schematic, I guess, but there's no fun in doing things the easy way. So I decided to just wing it and design it myself. First step was to make a palette, for which I made a rare trip to a creative world. Basically, I selected all the blocks that were green and bluish, and then I figured out that the most usable blocks in this palette were a combination of wool, concrete, prismarine variations, and a few more blocks to fill out the gradients. At this point in the world, I have reasonably easy access to most of these resources, but I have never made a wool farm yet. Sometime in the future, I will surely make an automated one, but right now, I just wanted to get the wool I needed for this particular project quickly. So I gathered a bunch of sheep, put them in a makeshift pit, and bred them up to collect the resources I urgently needed for the ceiling. While the sheep were growing up and or regrowing their wool coats, I had to stay in this area. So I made my most of the time here by restoring what is probably the most severely damaged location in my entire world. This place is actually the namesake of Loonyville. It was called the Desolate Plains of Loonyville early on in the world, and this is where I would go hunting for mob heads in thunderstorms very early on. Downside of that is that I ended up with a huge crater-filled war zone right next to the harvest seat. So this week, I gathered the grass blocks I needed to address that issue and tidied the place up. Every now and again, I pass by the sheep pen to gather their wool while I restored this area to somewhat less of an eyesore. Since I never sleep in the world, I run into a lot of mobs overnight, and if you see enough mobs, you're bound to run into rare ones. This guy had been sitting in his boat for what seems to be forever, waiting to be transported to the museum. So I broke the boat, took him with me, and brought him to the museum room, or what has to become a museum sometime soon, because this place is currently just a huge cleared out blocky prismarine space. I cannot wait for you guys to see what it will be like by the end of this video. Before we could get to work on that room though, I decided to try yet another thing to reduce the lag around the base. Maybe these end crystals were a source of lag because of their, for Minecraft terms, quite complicated animations. To prevent literally blowing up the corners of the roof, I submerged them and blew them up then. I feel like it helped a little bit, but honestly, it's probably time to install sodium by now. Alright, back to the museum. The wool was taken care of, but before we could start on the ceiling, there were a few more block types that I had to collect. So I flew out to the nearby Badlands biome, where I already had a beacon set up. I gathered some terracotta and made my way back to base. With the terracotta, my green block gradient was complete, so I got to work on the first part of the ceiling design, the Eye of Ender in the center of it. Once I liked the design for the eye, I needed to get all the blue blocks sorted, which meant I took another trip to the concrete converter. This thing is incredibly loud if I do not turn it down. So I did, and I got a bunch of blue and light blue concrete blocks. With those blocks sorted too, I went back to the museum hall to get back to work. Now, when I'm building projects like these, everyone is always telling me that it is way too dark. You know what? You guys are always right. But I really do think that it is the best way to go about it, because builds can get a lot more character with some light and dark contrast in the right place. By keeping the project dark early on, it is way easier to design those contrasts later down the road. For now, I continued working on the ceiling with night vision potions, because I did want to see what I was doing. During construction of this project, there were a few moments where I heard a lightning strike. Whenever that happens, I make my way to the Loonyville construction site as quickly as possible, because mob head hunting for me has the highest priority out of just about anything in the world. There's only so many opportunities to expand that collection, and I tried to make the most of them. So when I heard the first thunderclap, I rushed to get rid of some of the blocks in my inventory, grabbed my tridents from my ender chest, and shot up the bubble elevator out of the museum. With my Riptide trident in slot 2 and a channeling trident in slot 3, I tried to get as many charged creeper explosions as I could in as little time as possible. Later in the video, we'll have another thunderstorm where I broke my record for most mob heads in a single storm. I'll tell you how many mob heads I've collected after that one, but I'm really glad that I restored the cobblestone platform after this storm, because the score on the next would be absolutely insane. Before the thunderstorm was over, I actually spotted something that I cared about even more than mob heads. This fully enchanted golden skeleton would be a perfect addition to the Golden Boy's room in the museum. Once I had secured him for transport later, the thunderstorm had finished. So I made my way back and continued construction. When I finished the ceiling design, I wanted to get a good look at it. So I decided to remove all the prismarine slabs I'd used as a construction platform. During the removal of the slabs, something really crazy happened. But I'll share that insane moment with you guys during the 6,000 Days movie. Today, we focus on building the museum. Once I removed the slab construction beams, the result looked really cool. But it was also hard to see from the floor of the museum space because of how dark it was, which meant that I had to do something creative. I had to come up with a solution to light the ceiling design without compromising how clean the design looked. After some consideration, I decided that the best way to go about it would probably be trying to use small light sources, which means no full blocks like sea lanterns. By digging out holes in the ceiling and putting end rods 2 layers higher up than the actual design, I had a solution that is barely visible from down below, unless you're looking straight up, which actually makes it look like there's little stars. It's awesome. I absolutely love this solution. With shaders on, the room looked really crazy as well. Although the sea lanterns that were still in place ruined part of the light-dark contrast at this point, which meant that it was time to reconsider the bridges around the room. These bridges were designed before I came up with the ceiling design, and with the design now in place, I felt like they didn't really make sense anymore. So I came up with a new design that kept the lines on ground level a bit more straight. As I was designing this, I decided to incorporate amethyst blocks. You guys just know that I did it for a sound, right? At the same time, I could see the purple work in the room as well once the prismarine walls were covered up a bit, so they would be less prominent. During this stage of construction, I realized that the blue beacon beam from the diamond beacon didn't really work with the eye fender above it, so I decided to cover the beacon in lime green glass and make the ceiling design and the beacon above it part of the same installation. That turned out really cool. You could even say that it really tied the room together. The museum is an ongoing project, so we'll be coming back to this place later to add to it. Actually, we'll do that for as long as I will have this world. Right now, it was time to start thinking about finishing up this phase of development though. Most important step that was left was making the walls a bit less present. At this point, we had massive green flat surfaces all around the room that needed cutting up. So I counted out the room and started adding lights and small pillars to the bottom and arches on the top. Unfortunately, the room was 1 block too short to accommodate my design, so I decided to move the entire back wall on one side by a full block. It was a little bit of a time investment, but definitely worth it for the design. During the process of moving the wall, I got massively scammed. A baby zombie drowned with a trident showed up, and that's only the second time I've seen one of those guys in this world. So I name tagged him and left him in the museum while I went to get a boat to put him away somewhere safely. Somehow, when I came back, he was nowhere to be found. I literally looked everywhere, but it seems like he defied Minecraft logic and just despawned on us. Or, come to think of it, maybe he got eaten by axolotls. Well, I guess that's just what you get for throwing forks at people. Shouldn't have done that. Right when I came back to the museum, another thunderstorm started. So again, I rushed out of there as quickly as I could. With the ladder frames freshly restored, I went absolutely insane during this storm. Take a look. By the end of this madness, I had collected no less than 36 mob heads in a single storm, which brings the total to 1,604. Not only did I get a really crazy amount of mob heads during the storm though, I also found this guy, who is 5 out of 5 pieces enchanted, including the bow, and he's on a horse. Oh, dang. To the Golden Boys room with this one. Skeleton riding spiders and horses are a little bit tricky. They desperately try to suffocate themselves in any sort of ceiling. So a little while ago, I made this tunnel to safely transport them to the museum. For now, we'll park this skeleton rider over here in the hallway, and we'll take him to the Golden Boys room later. I went on to finish the museum hall until I needed some more wool for carpets. When I made my way to the sheep pen, I found yet another really awesome golden mob. I think they're just all coming over because they want to be a part of this Golden Boys room that we have. This guy is a fully enchanted baby zombie in gold armor. These guys were actually the ones that started the whole collection and gave me the idea for the Golden Boys room. I'll imprison every single one of them as a tribute to Filza. For the time being, I put him in a boat under a mushroom to prevent sun damage, and I got back to finishing the glow squid pillars in the museum so I could start editing this video for you guys. I am really happy with the way this room turned out. I hope that you guys like it just as much as I do, and I can't wait for you guys to see it on stream soon. As long as streams aren't there though, I'll make sure you get another one of these next week. Thanks for watching, guys. And for today, Loony out.